and this is episode 8.
What do you do when others around you are successful?
This is a really, really challenging question for me, and I'll be immediately open and honest.
Maybe we've lost that art of and that genuineness of just celebrating somebody else. I think everybody feels that. It's what you do with it that counts.
The default is it means I'm not doing good enough. My potential, my competency, my capacity, my capability is not about me.
Don't measure what you're trying to achieve against their results.
Hello everyone, welcome back to The Winning Life. My name is Gareth Morgan.
I'm Leanne Morgan.
And this is episode 8.
How are we here already? Episode 8.
Time is flying, the year is flying by, and the episodes are flying by.
I know, we're in February and the year is absolutely zipping past, as always. I think that's what happens as you get older. Time goes quicker.
I am not admitting that I'm getting older. I'm still a 16-year-old.
You definitely are not.
Internally, I am.
Internally, mentally sometimes, you're not childish, you're youthful. There's
Absolutely.
a difference between childish and being youthful. And you are youthful. You've always challenged that in me, so that's good.
I think everybody wants to let their little inner child out every now and again. How does the inner child manifest itself in you, Liam?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Maybe I keep it so suppressed I don't know anymore. I genuinely don't know. You're probably better at that than I am.
I think an observation. Observation for you is when you find something funny and it triggers you off into then you stop thinking maybe about yourself, and then the little child comes out.
The little fit of giggles.
Then the funny little Leanne comes out.
And actually, I do like to mess about with our kids and still like to tickle them, even though they're grown up now. That I'd like to have that.
Yeah.
So that's the inner
and
child.
you laugh the most, and hear this, people. This is accountability. You laugh the most when I hurt myself. So you have to understand.
It's because it's
feel
funny.
sorry for me here, right? So the worse an injury I get, so let's say stub my toe, hit my head on the boot of the car or the trunk of the car, if you're American, I guess. And the harder that is, the greater the laugh. That's when the inner child, the mischievous, I might say,
in my defense,
child comes out for Leanne.
In my defense, it's funny. It's really funny.
I don't know what would happen if it was some really extreme thing.
It's because even my kids will do something and hurt themselves. No, not seriously, but they'll hurt and they'll go, don't laugh, because they know that I'm like, are you okay? It's just it's the comedy. It's this, what do they call it? Slapstick humor, isn't it? Of it's just funny.
Personally, I think it's dark.
So that's my inner child. What about your inner child?
My inner child comes out through competition.
That's true.
Always.
Yes.
So I guess the picture that immediately comes to mind, on a fun fair, the Dodgems is probably where you're going to see the inner child come out of Gareth. That's the bumper cars. Again, people call them different things. Because, it doesn't matter who is in those bumper cars. It could be a dad with a 1-year-old. I'm taking you out. I'm taking you out.
Brutal.
I am on there to win. Yeah. And so that's when, the inner child comes out. I just completely forget about my role in society and my responsibility as leading a family. And I am just a kid. So bring on the Dodgems.
You are very, very competitive. That is true. In fact, that kind of links to today's question. We did not plan that, but it does link.
The best things aren't planned.
Absolutely. Really?
Our marriage?
I did plan it. You might not have followed it.
You didn't plan the start. Meeting one another. Could you imagine how awful that would be? That wouldn't be very romantic if it was like, okay, are you ready? And go, action. And then you met each other.
There was an element of planning that I
that's called stalking.
Okay, let's get back to the question, which is, what do you do when others around you are successful?
This is a really, really challenging question for me, and I'll be immediately open and honest, because I think we want to be like this in our podcast. And the last thing that people need is a podcast or any content where we're trying to present perfection.
Yeah,
You're certainly not going to get that from me. And you'll get it a bit more from Leanne, because she is near perfect.
Little Miss
in my
Perfect.
eyes. But no, for me, this is challenging. In fact, there's a couple of questions in these next few episodes I would say are really challenging. And we're going to unpack this more. So I guess success, maybe we need to look at, why do people struggle to celebrate success
Someone
in
else,
others? Because I think in this country, we can't speak for every other country, but I think probably to some extent in every country, because it's human nature, but particularly in this country, we seem to struggle as a society in celebrating the success of others. Would you say that's the case?
Absolutely. I've mentioned it before in other episodes, but social media is a brutal, harsh place to be. And if anyone is achieving something or successful in something, they are immediately shot down for something else that they might have done wrong or slipped up. And because they are human, so people will deliberately go and find something about that person that will knock them down a peg or two. And I hate it. And it's passionately.
And it's weird, isn't it? Because it's, to some degree, we don't mind building people up. But it's almost like like we build them up,
it's false.
and then look for how we can knock them down. It almost becomes like a little game that, again, a dark game that we as society play. That we love it when somebody comes out of nowhere and becomes something, but then almost leave them there a while, and then we'll pull the stool from under their feet.
But it's still building somebody up really to make me look good. That is very judgmental, because not everybody does this, but you can see it because it's human nature.
Yeah.
People will build others up and, aren't they doing well, to make them look good, or almost ride on the wings of their success. And I think it's really sad, because maybe not everybody and not everybody all the time, but maybe we've lost that art of and that genuineness of just celebrating somebody else, just purely because they're doing a great job. And I think it's important to notice that I think it's easy to celebrate somebody who's been successful at something that you're not interested in.
Oh, yeah.
So if it's something you're not doing or you're not interested in, it's easy to go, that is amazing, well done.
That's it. So if it's like a world-class underwater basket weaver, then I have no problem celebrating.
Do you know one of those?
I haven't not got a clue, even if it's a thing. But I have no problem celebrating their success, because number one, I hate going underwater. Number two, I can't basket weave, and so therefore I will just stand back and I will give them all the applause. I have no problem celebrating somebody else who is in a completely different sector, field, area of skill. But I've got to be honest, where I have struggled, because I've said I am competitive, is when it's in an area where somebody else seems to be getting ahead, and therefore all of a sudden that, to me, I interpret that as in that's a reflection on my progress
that you're not doing as well, or so you view it through the filter of, well, what am I doing? So
I don't want to. So in one sense, what happens is, as soon as I see success in an area that is somewhere related, then it's almost like the spotlight is on me. So when somebody else puts the spotlight on somebody else, actually in me, the spotlight's on me and reveals my lack.
I think everybody does that.
Do you think?
I think
that's making me feel better. Anybody else out there, let us know in the comments or wherever you're listening to this, please. I think
it takes a really mature, special person. And again, I think we all do it at times, but I think everybody feels that. It's what you do with it that counts. So I think everybody, because we're human, we are not perfect, doesn't matter how successful we are even, we will look at something that someone else is doing and maybe it's similar to what we're trying to do. And that could be anything from being a parent to working in the same field with somebody, to a project that you might be on or whatever. I think everybody, and particularly these days with social media and the digital world, it's literally in front of you all the time. What people are doing, people are always celebrating. They don't put their failures on social media, do they? It's all their successes. So it's there in front of us. And when we see that, I think everybody feels a little pinch of, but what about you? Because we all have this internal battle inside of us of, you know, the human nature, the flesh, the self, and really the spirit, the real part of you that kind of says, no, come on. What are you going to do with this thought? What are you going to do with this feeling? What are you going to do with this kind of idea that you're not doing as well as them? So I think it's actually everybody feels that. But I honestly, and this isn't to, you know, pump you up and make you look good, I've never seen you act on that and say, oh, they're rubbish, or yeah, but have you seen this? Or, you know, you have taken the hit personally, but I think you've mastered, turn that into praise for them and say, well done, even though internally you might be thinking, but what about me? You've never gone, yeah, but they're rubbish, or, you know. So
I would
it's
say
what you do with it.
Oh, I 100%
important.
agree with you. I would say though, you know, I was going to say it's not in my defense actually, it's in prosecution of me, in my prosecution against me. You know, whilst I don't think I have been that kind of person who would outwardly kind of say, oh, they're rubbish, they're terrible, you know. But inwardly, you know, again, and on this podcast and through everything that we're doing, you know, we have and we do lead a church called Everyday Champions. We have a podcast called Winning Life. Every book I've written has got winning in the title. I work with elite.
Because you're competitive by any chance?
Potentially. I work with elite performers, and we work in that field. And the common thing here is that, you know, we want to succeed. We want to do well, which is a good thing and a right thing. But what happens for me is internally, when somebody else is being successful for far too long and far too many times, the time that I've stayed in that negative place is not good enough, you know, because as long as, you know, I might not be saying anything external, but internally what's happening is, you know, I get into a slump. It takes the wind out of my sails, or I allow it to. It doesn't do anything. What I turn it into in terms of meaning, that's what it does. And you're right, it's that battle between the spirit, which is your potential, which is the God part of you, but then your soul, which is your interpreting element of your life. In other words, what meaning you give to it. And again, what we want to do and what we're talking about here is how do we change the meaning of when somebody else is successful? Because naturally for me, the default is it means I'm not doing good enough. You know, it means, and that can, I think that I've seen what it can do in people. It either causes people to, like you said, react outwardly negatively, which is kind of the extreme wrong, or internally people start to lower their goals. And start to settle.
They don't want to be disappointed.
So I'll live with my measure of success because I've raised the level before and I've fallen short, or I've compared myself. And so people do that. They lower the bar, they settle. And what we have to do is we have to learn how to shift out of that. We have to change the meaning. And I believe that is our responsibility before God. It's our responsibility before other people, because ultimately, and this is what it comes down to, my potential is not about me. My potential, my competency, my capacity, my capability, it is not about me. Purpose. The actual word purpose is about being useful. It's about being a means to an end. Therefore, you know, when we talk about my purpose, actually what we're talking about is my usefulness to others. So again, when you start to realize, again, this is coming back to that thing of what does success mean? We have to realize success fundamentally is about how successful am I in serving others.
Sorry to interrupt, but just to let you know that in every episode, Gareth and Leanne will be talking about the importance of getting a plan for your personal and professional life. That's why they've developed the MVP plan. When you develop your MVP plan, surprising opportunities and uncommon results follow. Visit thewinninglife.tv today to get access to your plan and the steps on how to use it. Let's head right back over to their episode.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. If you start to view your purpose through what I'm bringing to everybody else, it shifts your thoughts. Because success, really, when we look at that word, what it means in society and in the world today is quite, I would say, a negative term. It's a positive thing that people want, but it can have a negative effect on people, because success it's what is it measured by? It's what's seen, what's kind of, it's the evidence of it, it's the results. It can be to do with kind of fame, fortune, renown, but I would argue that yes, they are kind of symbols, and they can be things of success, but success cannot be just simply those things. How many followers you have, how many likes you've had, how many people have subscribed to your podcast, how much money you have in the bank, all of those things. I think success has been reduced to those things. So when we see the evidence of that in other people's lives and not in ours, based purely on those things alone, we think we're not successful, and then that internal conversation goes down. But you see, I think there's something supernatural that happens when we elevate, encourage, and cheer on other people genuinely, not fake in a fake way, because that's rubbish. Sincerity. If you're doing it, challenging yourself to say, I am going to cheer people on, something happens to our spirit, to our soul, and then our mind and our actions that we can't manufacture.
I totally agree, because I think, and again, let me say at this point, most people don't have a definition of success. Now, you can go to the dictionary and get a definition of success, but really, you've got to have a definition. If we can't define, and again, this is the winning life, so this is a really important thing for us to talk about. If you can't define the win in any activity or in any area of life, we will struggle to know how well we're progressing. Because otherwise it becomes a moving target.
Yeah.
It becomes feelings led. So I feel like I'm doing well. Well, that's not measurable. Okay. So, the definition of success that I tend to use, again, I don't always feel like using this. I can slip back into the wrong definition, which is defined by how I am viewed in the eyes of others, which is the dangerous one. But success for me is bringing the best version of who you are to what truly matters most.
That's good.
And of course, for me, that's bringing the best version of who I've been created to be to what matters most. The job that I feel I've been given, the calling I feel I've been given. Because when you start to measure it that way, then actually it's about who I'm being in any moment, not the result, which goes back to a previous episode, that we've talked about, about results. And so results are a byproduct. They are not the focus in that sense. And so when you suddenly realize actually it's about who I am in any moment, then as soon as I remind myself of that, then actually how I am towards other people who are successful means I have to step into my true nature, which is I need to encourage. I need to build them up. If my value is to be devoted to people, to encourage people, to be passionate, then I need to passionately support other people. So I think it'd be good for us right now, Leanne, to look at, okay, what do we need to do in that moment when somebody is successful in an area similar to ourselves? How can we, when the feeling comes, and it will come, and we feel like, oh no, I'm not doing well enough, or, we feel resentment or whatever, what do you think we can start to do?
I think this comes back to something that we bring up a lot in these episodes, but I think we talked about it particularly a couple of episodes ago, was about going back to the plan that we have as well, because that is something that we talked about. I think it was when we said about results, when I'm not seeing results, which obviously can fall under this. It's very similar. When we look at somebody else and they are super successful and they're making it in whatever that is. Like I said, it could be that another mum is successfully got their child to sleep through the night and you're like, what? Or it could be,
why doesn't my child sleep through the night?
Ours never did, by the way. Or it could be, you know, like we said, in business, that you're looking at something in your kind of field that somebody else is achieving that. When you look at that and you feel that pinch of, I'm not there yet, don't measure what you're trying to achieve against their results. So it could be like, oh, well, I've not done it, but they have. Yes, but they've got a different plan. They've got a different goal. They've got a different created purpose. They've got a different whole calling on their lives to do something else. Why are we trying to live out someone else's purpose and then get upset when we look at ours and it's not working out yet? So I think it comes back to the goal, comes back to the plan, which is why we talk about the MVP plan, and maybe it's a good time to do a little push and plug for that you can go onto the website, thewinninglife.tv, and you can download your free 90-day MVP plan. However, if you want to know more about how to get involved in that, you can look at the whole website there and just let us know, because we are passionate about helping people get a plan. I've got to say that's, even though I'm a planner, it's Gareth is the one that has really developed this and it's helped me. So when we see other people who are successful, who are doing well, rather than getting bitter, let's get better about it. That's a real cheesy cliche, but actually it's so true. Don't get bitter, let's get better. And let's say, and I don't remember who coined that phrase, but hey, we'll use it here.
I think it's nobody knows.
Possibly. But better means, do you know what? I'm not going to, and it's not about focusing on self. It's actually, I'm going to cheer you on while I work on myself. And working on myself looks like being genuine with other people. Because when your heart is enlarged for others and genuinely pushing people on, like I said, something changes in your whole approach. I genuinely want my kids, our 3 children, I want them to go on to do better and greater things than I've done. And I want that same attitude almost for everyone else, not in a false humility. Oh, I'm nothing. I want everyone else to do better. If I am too busy cheering other people on, then I'm less wrapped up in kind of, just wrapped up in my own thoughts and negative feelings. So,
That's a great thought about the plan, because if you'd have met, again, we talked about the 16-year-old Gareth. If you'd have met the 16-year-old Gareth, you would not have met a 16-year-old planner. That's for certain.
If I'd met the 16-year-old Gareth, we may not have ended up being married.
That is also potentially true, because I've mentioned to you, this has been a real challenge for me. Whilst externally I may not show signs of insecurity, internally it can rage, and I've had to do exactly what Leanne has just said, which is my plan becomes my go-to. It becomes my anchor. Obviously what it represents and the calling and why I do it and who I do it for is beneath that, but it becomes an anchor point. So every day go to the plan. That enables me to, you've seen the racers who go into the 100-meter sprint. They're aware of the competitors around them, but there's a moment where they have to lock into their own lane. They literally have to, yes, they're competing against others, but they have to lock into the moment when actually they're competing against themselves. It's their performance against their potential, not the performance of other people. And that's what your plan does. It keeps you focused on competing against your potential, which is a good thing. It's the stretching towards that we absolutely need. We need to be being stretched. And I think, one of the things that I've had to understand is it's not just hungry people who achieve great things. It's hungry, humble people. And this is, I don't think there's probably any other kind of area which really tests humility than not just, and this is the distinction, and I talk about this in the Winning Conversation. You see a competitor will say, do you know what? I'm not going to pull other people who are successful down, even in areas where I operate. I'll learn from them And that is, do you know what? That's a great thing. That's hunger. There's a level of humility there. But if you want to go a step further, if you really want to drive that humility deeper, then actually become somebody who publicly celebrates that person for being successful, for having a significant contribution. Celebrate what they have achieved, because the act of you becoming the cheerleader, it almost just, it rules your soul, and it says to the NPC part of you, that non-playing character, the part of you which is the losing part of you, it almost just kills that person off inside of you and says, no, I'm not going to lower myself to that. And I think if we want to become great leaders in our field, in our families, my children do not need to see Gareth as a great leader. They need to see Gareth as a great follower.
Brilliant. I love that. My dad actually says that a lot, doesn't he? For those of you who don't know, for years, my dad is a leader of a church. I would, and I still look to him as my dad, but he's now kind of under our leadership in our church. And he says all the time, and it's a humbling statement for me. He says, I want to be a good follower. That's really hard as my dad saying that to me, but I want people to see us as great followers, that everyone's struggling to be the leader, everyone's struggling to be number one, everyone's struggling to be the best. What if we all just helped each other? What if we all just supported one another? We would all be successful. And success, sometimes we can, like I said right at the very start, we can get that warped in our minds, but as Christians, I look to my ultimate example, who's Jesus Christ. And when I look at his life, it looks like anything but successful. He only had 12 close friends, and they deserted him at the very end. One of them actually betrayed him and gave him over to death. Then he died the most painful, awful, criminal death of all. But yet, in terms of success, he has enabled us to be reunited with God and set us the most incredible example and forgiven us. And so success, let's not get caught up in what the kind of norm of success is. Let's really dig down deeper, because Jesus took a hold of what he came to earth for. The goal was to forgive us so that we could have eternal life. And so he knew that he was resolute with that. That was what success was for him, was to die for us. And so we need to stick with our goal, stick with what we know we're called to do. Don't get caught up in what others might think. Oh, nobody's following me. Oh, nobody's listening. Stick with it. If you know that's what you're supposed to do, take your eyes off what other people are doing and just cheer them on instead.
And we talked about that in the last episode, about legacy.
Yes.
Again, the mission of Christ was ultimately about the legacy of creating a way for mankind to be back reunited with the Father. And it's really important that the mission drives us. The legacy of actually, again, what am I being useful for? In what way is the world going to be better because I lived my life 500 years from now? And there's a verse from Hebrews 10 which says, let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works. In other words, let us think proactively, intentionally about how we may be that cheerleader. How can I and challenge ourselves, not just to cheerlead the easy wins, those who aren't doing anything like what we're doing, but those who we may find it really difficult to actually celebrate because they're actually doing well in an area that is similar to us. And it goes on to say, let us encourage one another, especially as the day is drawing near, it says. In other words, as the day draws near, it reflects on the fact that times do get difficult. They will get difficult. We saw this in the pandemic. Actually, the pandemic created a level of humility in society that I think was, although we wouldn't have wanted a pandemic, it was a refreshing change. It was almost a level playing field, a leveling out. And I think that's when the kind of a sense of community arose.
Definitely.
And of course, the longer we're away from the pandemic now, we kind of go back to some default settings here.
It's almost the opposite now, where people are at each other's throats.
It's almost like we've forgotten who we were in the pandemic. But the real you is someone who's here to serve. The real you is the person who has that mission to see others progress, to see others grow, to see others become everything that God created them to become. So, Leanne, a great conversation, a challenging conversation, but I think there's a real clear action point there for us, isn't there?
Yeah, and even talking about it, it kind of makes you go, I don't have to struggle and strive. Yeah. There's a difference between working hard on a goal and struggling and striving.
Totally.
And we're not created to strive like that in our own strength. We're created to be diligent with our plans and diligent with what we're called to do. So actually, I feel like I've been refreshed this morning as well. Sets you on,
I have too.
On the right track.
Yeah, go and find that person that you need to celebrate and point others to them, whether it's on social media or a text or in person. Let's take this challenge on. It's the challenge of champions. There's more in you than you think, and so go and be who you've been created to be. Take care. Until next time, God bless.
See you soon.
We hope that you enjoyed that episode. And if you enjoyed it, please go and subscribe over on all of our channels on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and not forgetting your favorite podcast platform. And if you head over to thewinninglife.tv, you'll be able to find all the resources available to you. Gareth has written several books which will help you on your discovery to building stronger and better lives. Come and join us for the next episode.